Jesus liberated women. And so when you look at Jesus' life, you can see it was completely counter to the culture that he came into. So a lot of people don't know it though, so you have to teach them old ancient truths that are still true in a contemporary way. And so if I can take the truths of the Jewish scriptures, and if I can communicate them in a way that people can actually see how liberating it is today, in 2013, 14, 15, I've done my job. And so when I let people know that the first Christian church was multicultural, not segregated on Sunday mornings like Dr. Martin Luther King said, 11 a.m. Sunday mornings, most segregated hour of the week. Well, that's not true at Bridgeway. Over 52 different nations. It looks like the United Nations. They told me I couldn't do it when I started it at age 25. And here we are 21 years later, and when you walk into that place, in fact, you go to bcctv.org and you see the service from Sunday, just look at the flyer. Just look at it. And you're like, dang. I mean, it's just amazing of how beautiful the human rainbow really, really is. And that nobody's less than anybody else, including women. So you look at Jesus' life, he liberated women. But if you don't see it from the right perspective, let me explain. If you read scripture and it says that women are supposed to be silent in the church, if you read that without understanding the interpretation of it, then it's real easy to believe it, right? Like that. But it's kind of like being black before the 50s here. Back in slavery, blacks weren't allowed to go to church. So there was 1 hour out of 168 hours in a week that black slaves were allowed to be free from their masters. That's when their masters went to church. So you had 1 hour, and that's why you get so much emotion in the black church, because it was that hour where you realize that your son was pulled away, or castrated, your daughter was raped, whatever. All that emotion now comes out for that hour. Master comes back, now that's all held down. But look at progress. Now, years later, generations later, blacks were allowed to go into the church, but they had to go and sit in the back of the church. Now, your view on that, that's progress for people who couldn't even go to the white church. Now they can at least go in the church, but they have to sit in the back. That's progress. But if we read it today, man, the blacks had to sit in the back of the church. That's not progress at all. It's backwards. Why? Because we're looking at it from this perspective. It's the same with women. Women must keep silent in the synagogue. You look at that and be like, see, they need to be held down. But actually, what the Apostle Paul was showing us is that they weren't even allowed in the synagogue before Jesus. And so now they're at least allowed in the synagogues, but at least be quiet, and if you have questions, ask your husband when you get home. It's just a completely different perspective if you look at it through the lens of Jesus who was liberated. So that's just one example, but I want to make sure to get that out because I can feel your heart on that one, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah.
Other questions?
Hey, everybody. Dave Moss from Atlas Core. I'm Pashto on Twitter, so this is very relevant to me. Also, pretty funny that there's 2 Jews and a pastor on a panel, and I've only ever been to Shabbat dinner with the pastor. Really nice.
We'll have to get you over.
Really nice to see you, brother. Yeah. Things like this, like the Social Good Conference and Nexus and a lot of other conferences that I go to, for me are really spiritual experiences. And I do go to temple on occasion, mostly high holidays, but sometimes in between. And those are important for me too. But like these are where I feel the most Jewish. Of any time during the year is this sort of thing. It's where I ask my questions. It's where I meet people. It's where I encounter different perspectives. And so my question for you guys is that irreverent? Am I is that wrong? Should I be looking more traditional?
No, you're doing it exactly right. You're asking a big